Hello, and welcome to episode 5 of Millennials Gone Circular. Today we're joined by the very thoughtful and inspiring Tomáš Slaný, who shares his journey from the mountain ranges of Slovakia to the heart of Berlin, all while walking the talk of sustainable living. Tomáš has a background in environmental chemistry and now works in sustainability consulting, but it's really his personal lifestyle choices that's really set him apart. In this episode, Tomáš chats to us about the practicalities of sustainable living, how culture and upbringing shape our environmental awareness, and what it really means to make conscious lifestyle changes, from choosing secondhand clothing to skipping the elevator and rethinking air travel. Tomáš also shares his creative passions like music and how this helps him process climate anxiety and reimagine the future. You'll walk away from today's episode with both inspiration and new ideas for your own sustainability journey. Let's jump in.
Millennials Gone Circular. We got the vibe spectacular. Make a change every day. Join the movement, come watch me.
Hello. Welcome to Millennials Gone Circular. We're back for episode 5 now. Holy smokes. We've got Saeed here today and Angelica as usual. How are you both?
Hey, Caitlin. Yeah, very good. Still having my coffee. But yeah,
Nice.
great. This Saturday in Sweden, the weather is, not the best, a bit rainy, but okay. I like it. Cozy.
Yeah, nice. Saeed, what about you? What's happening over there in Belgium?
Nice. Today is special. It's the first day of Ramadan, so I'm fasting. Hope it goes well. So no coffee for me. And the weather is it's cloudy, you say. So yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
We're used to it.
Well, it's cloudy here in the Netherlands, but luckily we've got someone on the show today to bring us a bit of sunshine. So today we've got Tomáš Slaný joining us today, and he's representing Eastern Europe, specifically Slovakia, but I'll let him get to all of that. But he's talking to us today about sustainability on a personal level, living sustainably, all that good stuff. How are you, Tomáš? Welcome.
Hello, thank you. Good morning. I'm doing also pretty good. Here in Berlin, where I'm currently based, it's also kind of cloudy, so I guess we are all having the same weather.
Yeah.
European weather.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, we're so excited to have you today. We've been getting a lot of questions from our listeners about wanting to hear sort of the juicy details of someone that's living sustainably, what they're doing, and they're looking to draw a little inspiration. So I think let's just get stuck into it. Maybe, do you want to start off by telling us a bit about yourself? Like, who is Thomas? What do you do? What's your story with sustainability? What's your background? Where did you live? All that juicy stuff.
Yes, of course. So I'm basically a human being which was born into a beautiful land of Slovakia. So I'm from central Slovakia, specifically a region called Lipto, which is situated between two mountain ranges. So wherever you are always basically surrounded by mountains. And I think this actually had a deep influence on me as a person, because I think this connection, just the visual connection to the mountains, always basically made me feel somehow accompanied by nature. And I used to spend a lot of time in nature as a kid. I used to go to the nature to contemplate, find peace there. It was my happy place. And based on that, I think also my interest in environmentalism and trying to live sustainably was sparked. And so I spent my first 19 years there. Then I went to study in the Czech Republic. I studied chemistry. But over the course of my degree, I started taking some like classes focused on environment, and suddenly it popped out in my head that maybe I could focus more on this also on a professional level in the future. But I was also intrigued academically, so then I decided basically to go for environmental chemistry, which before I didn't really think about. I think this was mostly because of me not really thinking that not having no prior experience in something related to environment would allow me to like explore this field. But then I realized that it's something I'm passionate about and it would be a good thing to go for it. So then I basically studied, or I majored in environmental chemistry, and then I basically wanted to go for a field of study that would have more tangible impact, not just academia. So I decided to go for an international master's in sustainable resource management, which basically brought me outside of the region of Eastern Europe to Belgium, Sweden, and other countries. I get to meet people from diverse cultures, and it was a great experience. And after I graduated, I got a job as a sustainability consultant. I was working remotely, traveling a bit around Europe, and now I ended up here, settled in Berlin. So that's
Wow.
yeah.
Amazing. I can just imagine, I haven't been to Slovakia myself, but I can just imagine what a special upbringing that would have been, growing up with them surrounded by the mountains. And do you have wild horses? I have an image of just horses running wild.
Not really.
No.
But we have like where my parents currently live, we basically live just next to like a meadow, and we have like wild deer and foxes and
Yeah.
animals like that, but not really horses. But
Well,
yeah, I definitely recommend visiting.
yeah, I will.
Yes, it would
Wow,
be great.
that's actually inspiring and interesting. It connects with me a bit because where I grew up in Morocco is also a mountain
Mhm.
area, and I think we're influenced by the environment where we grew up. Indeed, I'm curious. Just a quick question in between is, how did you adapt to the change from coming like from nature, like mountain, like really remote places where you have peace, you connect with nature, to living and adapting in a city such as Berlin, and like adapt to all these changes in like lifestyle and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a big difference when you compare it, not just on the level of the landscape, but also, I would say, the overall atmosphere, because I'm from like a relatively small town, which has like 30,000 citizens. Now
Mhm.
I'm living like a city with maybe 3 or 4 million of population, but I don't think that it was such a difficult thing for me to adapt. I would say that it's not just about like the surroundings, but also what you are like carrying within you. So if you still have some, let's say, energy or vision that you want to make through, then I think regardless of the environment where you are, this still keeps you going. But yeah, like sometimes when I'm away for a long time and I come back, I'm like wondering why did I even leave? Because it's like so I guess I will end up just settling back in my own region. And I think it's actually quite interesting that all of us are like living outside of our home countries, right? So I guess you all probably had to go through the similar process, right?
Yeah, for sure. For sure, me.
Yeah,
Yeah, the same.
me too. I just wanted to ask you, Tomáš, now that you were talking about like maybe for you it's not the big difference in terms of like how much it takes you to adapt to like a new, more like urban big city, but maybe if you can tell us something that for you it's like the different like very punctual pros and cons between living in this a bit more like a mountainous, more natural based environment, and then to the city that is not so common to think about. Because, for example, then the naturals are like maybe the noise, maybe the amount of people. In terms of the city, it's like the nightlife or the things that you can do. So maybe something that you think it's not so common, that for you it was like a big difference between living in the mountains in Slovakia and now living in Berlin.
Okay. Yeah, maybe I would say that like this is more kind of a long-term thing, but if you are like grow up in a rural area, I think it makes you to be like more resourceful because you don't really have so many opportunities to like do stuff that you would find like very interesting or so. So you have to basically come up with some things. Like for example, I think being in like this rural region is great if you want to like work on some art because you don't really have so many distractions as in the city, you know.
Yeah, that's a great point. I never thought about it.
Speaking of art, we did a little digging, and we learned that you are a producer of music. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so I think this still connects basically to the point of like trying to find something interesting within like a small city with limited opportunities. So I think as kids, me and my friends, also my brother, we were just trying to basically entertain ourselves, and we were quite creative. We were like shooting some movies and stuff like that. And then I basically discovered rap music. So I was quite inspired by that because I think maybe one thing that is interesting about rap music is that there is like very low entry point. Like you don't really need to be great at singing or something to make this type of music, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
And is this Slovakian rap, or I don't know if that's a stupid question, but or is it
yeah,
what language of are you listening
yeah,
to?
yeah. Like I started listening to like Slovak rap,
Yeah.
and I mean, yeah, of course, like the mainstream rap is not very aligned with sustainability, right? Because they usually promote like topics of like consumerism and different types of behaviors that are not so healthy. Let's say it this way. But I think still the form of rap is great, and yeah, so yeah, I was working on some music, also different genres and stuff, and then I even made, I think, yeah, 5 years ago, I actually made like a track related to like environment, which was like basically a concept that this song would be like a letter to the future generations. I made it at the opportunity of the 50th anniversary of the Earth Day, and this track was basically supposed to be like extrapolated 50 years ahead. So in the year 2070, and it was like basically a letter explaining the current situation and basically apologizing if the things don't go well. So I think I was just trying to like um, translate some anxiety or something into some
Yeah.
words, find some relief. Yeah,
I love that because we need to be able to imagine the future that we want, right? And I think that's what you sounds like what you're trying to bring in with your music is kind of painting a picture or wrapping a picture rather of what the future could look like.
yes, and I think it was also something of a reminder, like maybe to make people more sensitive about these topics, to be able to empathize with like people that haven't even been born yet, because I think it's also like a big factor within like trying to be sustainable, to be able to like transpose yourself out of your current limited experience into like future and the surroundings around you. And yeah, I would say creativity is definitely something that is quite aligned with environmentalism, because I think it also kind of fosters this sense of not trying to abide with some norms, because if you like really want to create and you get like carried away with your process of creation, it brings you to like some new original concepts and ideas. And I think this is quite important also when we talk about environmentalism, because you might always or often find yourself to want to do things differently from the major population, right?
Yeah, I think the very foundation of sustainability is sustainability challenges the status quo by definition. Right now, we're in a linear, unsustainable economy, and we're trying to get there. So we need to challenge these norms, or these social norms.
Yeah, definitely.
No, yeah, I totally agree. I was recently also like reading a book where they mention like a very interesting experiment called the Robber Cave, and where they explain like this behavior of humans, that we have this biological need of belonging, right? We need to belong a community, regardless of topic, like I don't know, religious, political, any type of community. And then they were mentioning that where humans feels, ironically speaking or paradoxically speaking, when humans feels too connected with their own beliefs and community, in this case based on our own needs, then it creates, at some point it crosses the line to create a feeling of us versus them. And that's basically the basis, the psychological basis of every single conflict in our history as humans. So then, based on what you were thinking now, I was reflecting a bit about this experiment and thinking that with sustainability, you are trying to create a mindset where you want to belong to this movement on of like, let's take care of the environment, let's protect our resources, but at the same time considering the fact that if we belong too much to these kind of feelings or needs, then we will cross the line to us versus them, right? You will start thinking why they're not doing this, and pointing fingers at the people that is not thinking and doing the things like you are doing it. And that creates basically more conflict, even though at the beginning you had a good, I don't know, let's say you had a good initiative, but at the end of the day, as soon as you cross the line and you start thinking us versus them, even with sustainability, even with good initiatives from your side, and let's say against other practices that are not so sustainable, so good for the environment in our future, it is still a conflict, it is still an issue.
And I think that's what it sounds like. What Tomáš, you're doing with your music. It's challenging that status quo. It's kind of challenging that us versus them, which is really cool. But what I'm really keen on, I think, in our first episode, Saeed, Angelica, and I, we all spoke about our aha moment, essentially, into sustainability. What was your aha moment? When did you sort of first become self-aware of sustainability, and then, where did it go from there?
Yeah, so I don't know if I could really define a specific point in time where it would be like suddenly I had this like great epiphany that
The angels didn't descend from the heavens and sing songs.
So I would say for me it was more like a gradual process. Like I know, like even as a kid, I was always the one in our household who was like sorting the waste, and like I saw that my parents wouldn't put it to the right bin, so then I was like correcting their mistakes and stuff like that. So I think it's basically streamed from this feeling of connection with nature. And I think there is also another very important part to it, which is basically the knowledge that you have about the impacts that your actions are associated with. But to get to the first point, I think this like sensitivity or like feeling of connection with nature is really important. And I think it's also something we as urban society have lost to some extent. So I think we should work on trying to regenerate it and rebuild it. And yeah, I'm also having this kind of a framework, like I think the problem with sustainability is that when we as species evolve and we learn through like basically this experiential learning, right? Like you do something and then there is feedback that comes and you learn from that feedback. Like if I put my hand into the fire, I get burned, and then basically programs my subconscious mind to basically prevent some harm, right? But with sustainability, we are looking to global problems which are operating in a much larger time period. So we don't really get this feedback loop. So we basically need to substitute this like feedback loop with the scientific knowledge of the world that we have, which is actually quite let's say, a novel concept for us as humans, because during our evolution, we are basically used to learning mostly from our sensory experience, right? So I think if we are able to like contemplate about this and like internalize this, I think that's a way of building this self-awareness as well.
Interesting. I was just thinking about whether like natural disasters, floods, fires that has been happening like in the last couple of years, aren't they like a sort of like feedback that is also very like important reminder? Do we have to really justify like the changes in a large time scale? I think those, for me at least, like the natural disaster that has been happening, like are sort of signs and also represents feedback loops.
Yes, definitely. But I think what might still be problematic is that we might not really intuitively connect it to our own actions, right? Because it's not like it's not like I'm gonna use my furnace and then the flood will come in the next minute or something.
Yeah.
So I think we don't really have this like sense of direct connection. So I think that's
We're
why
all
we
just
need
sort of a
to.
drop in the ocean, right? Or we all think individually we're a drop in the ocean.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's not doing much. Yeah.
Yeah. However, I was thinking about like a section of the book that I read. I haven't read the full book, when basically they were talking about these very isolated tribes, you know, like Polynesian tribes that they haven't had like contact with modern civilization ever. Like they completely isolate themselves. And then this anthropologist, he was explaining that for them, they feel, or they said, they express, they state that they can communicate directly with nature, with the universe, with the sky. And then the leader of this tribe, when this anthropologist told him that he couldn't do that, like this leader of this tribe was very like surprised. Like, how could you not listen and communicate with a tree? I mean, what's wrong with you, kind of vibe. And then the conclusion of science, because those experiments were made in the 60s, the conclusion of science now, after almost 65 years, is that there is a chance that humans at some point in our history, very back, very behind us, we had some sensors, some skills to understand and communicate more directly with nature. But at the moment that we start exploring other techniques, like scientific method, we little by little just lost it. And nowadays, that's why for humans, it's like a bit esoteric or spiritual or a bit too bohemian to think that at some point in our history, we actually had the skill to directly communicate or talk with the tree, for example, with the water. So for me, it was like a bit like mind blowing, like maybe.
So
There was
Avatar in
some-
real life.
Yeah.
Avatar
Yeah,
was
it-
real. It's a true story.
Yeah, let's see some 10 years, and I think, or even 5 years, and I think we will solve that that question. If we maybe had senses that we just lost, skills to communicate with nature that we lost, and that's why now we are so disconnected with everything related to nature compared to other civilizations back in the days.
Yeah, definitely. That's very, very interesting, and I think maybe one of the ways we should try to move forward would be to really regain these abilities, right? But yeah, I think I'm not sure if it's really that accessible for like people outside this tribe. Like you would probably have to go and live with them maybe like a year or two or your whole life, or I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a really interesting concept to think about. But something I want to switch gears a little bit. Something that you said struck me before, Tomáš, about you being the little bin police growing up in the home and separating waste. I can relate to that. Not growing up. My aha moment didn't come till later in my late 20s. But I was definitely the bin police in my shared house. But part of my background has been in behavior change and waste education. And one thing that we try and target is teaching is younger children, because they can take that knowledge back to their parents and start changing attitudes and behaviors of their parents. Did the things that you like sorting waste at home, did that have an impact or overspill onto your parents and the way that they acted in terms of sustainable living, I guess?
Yeah, I think they were also trying on their own, but I think definitely there's like a huge impact that kids have on their parents. And that's, I think, also something that should be leveraged through the educational systems, because we can educate kids. It's much more difficult to educate the adults, right? But I think through the kids and the connection to their parents, that could be a good way to like bring more awareness also to the elder human beings.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'm curious, what areas of your life, I mean, I know you said you didn't have a specific aha moment and things sort of crept in insidiously and over time, but was there an area of your life that you noticed that had the biggest sustainability impact? Like, did you change what changes did you make? Was it your diet, travel, consumption?
Yes, so I would say it was all of them. So I basically realized that me as a consumer, I have like a great power okay, maybe not a great power, but I have like my free will, and I can decide what type of behaviors within the companies that produce their products I want to support. So I think it started probably with fashion. So I was trying to get like more sustainable products. I was using basically this I'm not sure if you know this organization, Good on You. They are basically rating all of the fashion brands. So I think that's a really nice initiative. So I was trying to basically shop from like the brands that they have highlighted, and also like minimizing my consumption. I'm basically buying most of my stuff in the secondhand stores. Also, this shirt is from a secondhand. And also like my electronics. I'm actually right now using this computer which I bought 6 years ago, which is like a refurbished computer from 2015. It still works by a miracle. And so also like other areas of my life that I have like realized have impact. I'm a vegan now, but I was vegetarian before, not only for the environmental reasons, but also for the sake of animals. And maybe the most unconventional, I'm not sure if it's the most, but maybe the most inconvenient is the travel. So I used to refuse flying wherever, but I actually changed this last year. So I took 3 flights last year. But otherwise, when I can, I'm taking a bus. So last year I basically traveled by bus from Portugal to Slovakia, or all across the Europe. It's a lot. So, but I think this also like brings you into like a different way of perceiving travel. So you don't really travel in like one trip, but I split it into multiple stops, so I can also explore things on the way. So it's quite nice. But yeah, it's not the most comfortable thing to sleep on the bus. But I'm quite used to it now.
Wow, I love that. And I know, I don't think we have mentioned it earlier, but me and Thomas, we were friends, we know each other. We did
Yes.
the same master's program and we traveled together sometimes. And I remember just one time in Sweden where we had to take an elevator. We were a group and we had Thomas with us, and we were like taking an elevator to the 5th floor, and we already taken the elevator. It's gone. It's going to happen, and Thomas refused to take the elevator and he took the stairs. I was thinking about it, yeah, and I remember that, yeah, and it's like, this is so inspiring, I think, yeah. And I think in terms also transport, you're super strict, and I know even though you took like 2-3 flights last year, that's still like a huge I think action in terms of refusing to fly, and try to go for alternatives compared to average people. I think last year I did already 4 or probably 5 flights, probably, I think, even more, yeah.
Yeah. I also paid for like the carbon removal for those flights, so at least yeah, it should be removed at least to some degree, I think. But yeah, I think it's also nice that like some of these more sustainable choices actually are like supporting some other areas of life. Like, let's say you don't take the elevator, but you take the stairs, so that's usually good for your health. Like, it's a very small thing, but I think it's good. So yeah, I also always prefer to like go somewhere on a bike or walk if it's feasible.
Yeah, that's such an inspiration. And like, it's taking a stand isn't, again, it comes back to going against the status quo, right? You putting yourself out there and taking a stand with what aligns with your values, and that's super inspirational. The things that, like, the lifestyle that you're living are quite extremes. I imagine, maybe you can prove me wrong, but I imagine you didn't wake up one day and go, okay, no more flying, or no more animal products, or no more buying new. Was there a progression into those? Because not everyone, I mean, it's a bit scary to think about, okay, I need to live more sustainably, but I'm not ready to commit to going full vegan or not flying back home to see my parents ever again. What was your progression through those?
Yeah, so yeah, it was definitely a gradual process that took, I think, a few years as I was incorporating like more things. Also, as I was like learning more about like impacts of different activities. So yeah, I think of course it's difficult to like change everything overnight. But I think yeah, you can always like, for example, if you know you want to change something, you can devise some plan of taking some smaller steps, seeing how feasible those are. But of course, you have to decide what's like aligned with your personal goals, how much like sustainability is important to you, or what you can compensate in some other ways. Like, of course, it's important to go back home and see your parents, and if they live on the other side of the world, then yeah, you could even sail there if you would have like a month of time. That might be a nice trip and a nice holiday. But yeah, if you don't have the time, then you have to take a plane. So yeah, I think
I've seen a perfect storm, so I'm not excited about getting on a small little sailboat in the middle of the ocean. I'm not a great flyer, so I'm screwed anyway. Anyways.
Yeah. No, I think that this takes you to a question that I would like to make you to all of you guys, actually, because I would like to know a bit your perspective on it. And I have this conversation with more people, so I think I usually like to understand this point of view for as much people as possible, which is about comfort. Basically, I think many of the companies and yeah, the business in the entire world they base their strategy on make your life easy and more comfortable, right? So, but many of these like small daily decisions that we take to be more comfortable, they go against to be more sustainable. Some of them, as Thomas just mentioned, it's like, yeah, you know that maybe you will be a bit healthier if you take the stairs instead of the elevator, but it's more uncomfortable, you know. So how do you deal with this in your daily lives and those like small decisions that you take, and how does it feel, and how was your own thoughts about it?
Tomáš, I think this leads on really well from what you were just saying. Maybe we'll throw it to you first. On the spot.
Yeah, so I think, of course, it can bring some inconvenience, like, you know, sitting in the bus for 16 hours instead of like flying somewhere in like 2 hours. But I think it comes back to two things. One of them is like getting used to it, and once you get used to it, it's not that difficult anymore. But when you are in this phase of getting used to it, I think you just need to find some willpower within and just push for it. And yeah, I think we might tend to always like go for the most comfortable things, or like find the path of like least resistance, right? So I think to really be effective in this, you should also be more observant of your emotions, and because I think these like least resistance decisions are usually not super consciously made, so they are often controlled by some subconscious tendencies, and if we become more aware of those tendencies, we have them under a greater control, and we can make more conscious decisions for ourselves.
Yeah, that's a very good
Um,
point of view.
Yeah, interesting question, by the way, Angelica. I was thinking, like, from my side, I take example of like taking a bus. I do take the bus sometimes when it's not long distance. I, for instance, took it once from Brussels to Stockholm, which is not really most comfortable experience to do, especially with the mini stops. But then, like my thought about this, and I planned this before taking that trip. It was to actually experience. The experience is different. If you fly, you only see Brussels directly to Stockholm. The experience, if you take a bus, for instance, I got to stop in Amsterdam, have a tour there, and then also in Germany. Then I stopped also in Copenhagen, Malmo, and then Stockholm. So I had to experience this. So I was trying to look at the positive side of it as well. So this is part of it too, the experience of being able to see those places and maybe try local food, although it might lead to probably additional consumption, which probably you will do anyway, because you will arrive, in an hour in Stockholm, you also still go for lunch there, right? And so on. And then the other thing is also to look at the outcomes. And for this, I take the example of like cycling, for instance, like in Belgium in general or Netherlands. I think it's much common. I think the outcome is like, you also get fresh air, you cycle, you move your body. It's like sort of sports. I'm saying just if you go just to the work just or study in the university, that's also like a positive side of it. And then also one could consider like the costs. I think sometimes like the sustainable alternatives are not all the time, but sometimes they are also like less expensive, and that's also something to consider. And it's basically experience, outcome, and maybe cost. That's probably how I look at it.
I like it.
Absolutely. I think for me to answer your question, Angelica, it's so hard. We live in a consumer society, so convenience does trump sustainability, and the system. It's by design, right? Right. And I think there's lots of layers and explanations under that we'll probably focus on in future, maybe deep dive episodes. But I think it comes back to what Tomáš said before about recognizing how you feel. Like a lot of these decisions that we make come back to how we feel. It's important to know that a lot of decisions we make are, dopamine seeking behaviors that we want that instant gratification. We want that delivery to get here in 2 hours. We want it's just that plays a huge part in this consumerism thing. We just think there's a lot of feelings of being not enough, so we need this to be better and we need this to feel better. So I think that's huge and also worth a deep dive in the future. But I think in terms of trying to overcome convenience over sustainability, I think it's worth picking one thing, because you can get easily overwhelmed by all the different sustainability things that you could possibly do. Pick one thing that kind of resonates with you, that sticks really well with you, and make that one change and practice it over and over and over until it's a habit, until you're used to it, until it's just part of your life. And then you can pick the next thing. So for me, the thing that started it off, I think I mentioned this in our first episode, the thing that started it off was scrunchy plastic. I figured out we could recycle it. So I was that bin police trying to save all the scrunchy plastic in a bag and take it back to the supermarket for it to get recycled. That just kind of became a regular part of my life. And from there, the next step was coffee cups. So I refused to get coffee in it's just such a simple thing, but I refused to get coffee in takeaway cups. And I lived in Melbourne. So if I didn't have my takeaway cup, I just wouldn't get coffee. Especially, I would opt to sit in and just enjoy the coffee. But if I didn't have time, I just wouldn't get it. And living in Melbourne for ages, that says a lot. So it's just about that progressive, it's not convenient to bring your own cup, but it is more sustainable, but you kind of chip away at it. Anyways, that's my response.
I think I learn a lot from each of you guys. That's why I really love to understand a bit, because the way I saw it throughout my life, and now even more clear and evident now that I moved to such a different country, like the one and the culture like the one I came from, which is basically people, and this is something that maybe if our audience or the people that it's listening to us wants to have their own opinions, please let us know. But the way that I saw it throughout my life, and it's when you come from a culture or countries that does not have seasons, you are not aware of so many things because you're just so used to the same, let's say the same weather means the same resources, means the same behaviors. And then when you come to countries like Sweden, for example, with such a marked seasons, you basically realize that people it's more used to discomfort just because they need to pass through these seasons and save for the winter, and we don't have the need for that, right? So basically we are always thriving for comfort in my culture. So that's why for me comfort is such an interesting topic. But definitely, as Caitlin says, let us know if this is a deep dive topic that you really want us to talk about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So on that note, Tomáš, how does your cultural background influence your ability to become self-aware of sustainability, take action? How do you think cultural background influences someone's, whether they're going to take action and become aware of it?
Yeah, so I think it has a huge impact, definitely, as we were also discussing right now. So I think to become aware of something, you need to be culturally speaking in an open-minded society that encourages you, or at least allows you to look for different answers to the common questions. And then aside from the cultural aspect, there's also the socio-economic aspect. So like becoming sensitive towards the environment, unfortunately, it's still a privilege, because if someone is living in basically the survival state of mind where they basically have to dedicate all or most of their time to just trying to survive and make it through the day, then they don't really have the opportunity and the space for like becoming more sensitive towards their environment, because this could actually cost them their chance of survival, let's say. So it's definitely a huge impact. But from my experience, yeah, I'm coming from Europe, not, let's say, not the wealthiest part of Europe, but still it's quite wealthy in a global scale. And yeah, my family, we are very open-minded, I would say. There was no ideology that would be like enforced in my family. So I think thanks to that, I was able to like think for myself and, build this relationship with the environment, become aware of it, look for like the ways I can reduce my impact, even though it was in conflict even with my own family. Like when I would buy, like, let's say this computer I have, like my mother would be telling me that it's not a good idea to buy it just because it's more sustainable and that it will break down and stuff like that. So yeah, it's
That's a good example of role modeling for your parents, and showing that actually that's just an attitude that we've all kind of collectively, part of a capitalism society, we've all collectively understood or thought that new equals better, but refurbished is just as fine. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Great point. And I join you, Thomas, about this social and economic aspect. I think when someone is like just looking at their needs, I think like survival needs, they don't look after that. Sustainable living comes second, a second thing to look at. And from where I grew up, in my culture in North Africa or Morocco specifically, I have seen like both positive and negative side of that. Okay, from one side, like the maybe if you are undeveloped countries or like really have a poor economy, you tend to have unsustainable practices. Like for instance, waste, linear economy, and also because also in terms of policies, regulations, they're not that strict, and so on. But I also have seen like positive side of it, and that is because of this social economic situation, you have a lot of people tend to try to keep ownership of the things they have for a longer time period. Like they try to repair things, they try to to see if they can refurbish or resell things because they need money, for instance. That's going to be very, I mean, it's not, the idea is not from sustainability point of view, but it comes as a side positive outcome. And also like also when it comes to food waste, like I remember like I grew up in an environment where like food waste is like it's like it's not possible. You have to consume all the food that you prepared, otherwise you have to look outside and give it to someone who needs it. That's really like a number one rule I learned from my mom. So yeah, so and this is something that I think maybe wealthier countries or probably wealthy people in general do not implement, because they say, okay, it's just food, not really a focus. So I think I will stop here.
Yeah. I concur with Said. I really love that you brought up that social aspect. As someone who's grown up in both social sides of the coin, you're not thinking about being sustainable, you're thinking about surviving. So I really like that you mentioned that. But switching gears now, I wanted to talk about career. So you are an environmental chemist. by training, I guess. Would you say that's correct?
Yeah, so I have like a bachelor's in environmental chemistry, but I got my master's in like sustainable resource management. So that's like more an interdisciplinary field.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So I have taken chemistry classes, and I can say that I hated it. But I'm glad that there's people in the world that love it. So my hats off to you. Did you find it? I know it kind of aligns your career in sustainability, but did you find it challenging? Was it a weird choice to make to get into sustainability sort of field or focus as a career choice?
So I think for me it was not really that difficult, as I was able to also study like this environment related degree, right? And then I kind of smoothly transitioned into my current role. So I think for me it was quite smooth, but I think that's quite a rare case. And I think actually most of the people who work in the sustainability are like from different backgrounds than like environment, from my experience. So I think if anyone is like thinking about transitioning to sustainability, I'm encouraging you to do it, because you shouldn't really be just restricted to like your specific field. There is always a possibility to transition.
Yeah. And I might add there, any job can be a sustainable job as well. You don't have to
Exactly.
go, I mean, I went from being a physio to sustainability. You don't have to do that huge life upheaval change. You can do it right where you are now.
No,
Exactly.
great point. Exactly, like from my side, like engineering, you can be sustainability engineer. I mean, you just incorporate sustainability in what you do already in your engineering job, whether chemical and mechanical and so forth. So you don't have to do, I think, re-study everything from scratch. I think maybe that's probably something people think, that they have to start from scratch.
Yeah.
Yes.
And even from educational point of view, I remember in Colombia around 2017, the educational like plan changed a bit. So passed from having the environmental or like ecology subject specifically to just add it to every single subject in the study plan. So for me, that was like a very interesting change.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Friends.
Tomáš, I'm curious. I mean, we've talked a lot about, we're getting towards the end here now, but we've talked a lot today about what you're doing personally and in career-wise, and how your culture and upbringing have gone into that. And you're making a lot of amazing, taking a stand for a lot of amazing things, sustainability things in your life. Do you ever experience like fatigue? Is there ever a day that you walk up to an elevator and go, oh God, I just do not want to walk up these stairs today? Do you experience that, or how do you overcome that?
Yeah, so thankfully I don't have elevator in my building, so I don't have this kind of dilemma. But yeah, I would say I experience fatigue, but not really on like the level of like these individual actions, but more on like more broader long-term things. So for example, I don't do all the sustainable behaviors that I used to be practicing. For example, I used to like shop in these packaging free stores a few years ago, but then I moved to another country. I didn't find these stores there, and then I stopped. And I think also this might be sounding relatable for people who are like aware of the environmental problems for a few years, and then you see like, okay, I'm doing this stuff, but the state of society doesn't look like it's really changing, and you might feel like some kind of depression from this. And I think that's where the fatigue can come from, as it basically makes you less motivated to like care and so on. But yeah, I think it's always important to try to overcome it by going back to like the roots of why you are doing it, trying to be aware of your feelings, because I think the depression also just comes from some underlying anxiety and so on that you are suppressing. So if you are able to be there for those feelings, and then maybe even use the power obtained from it to act and to fuel your sustainable lifestyle.
Absolutely. I think that's really good
Yeah.
advice. Mm.
Totally agree. It just came up to my mind, like this reflection about the fact that you don't have to feel so guilty about many things, right? As you said, like you feel a bit like, yeah, I went a bit backwards, but I don't think so actually, because basically in our history there has always been thing. It's like with the microscope. Before the microscope, we thought it was witchcraft, the gods, whatever that caused certain kind of diseases. But then when the microscope was invented, then we realized, oh no, it's this like whole new world that we didn't even know about it. So for me, sustainability could be something like that. Like maybe we haven't invented, developed, discovered the tool to understand it clearly, and that's why we have made so many like mistakes through our history. So again, it's not something that we can feel so guilty about in that sense. We just don't know how to see it properly.
Absolutely.
That's an interesting point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so Tomáš, you're based right now in Berlin, in Germany.
Yes.
Can you give us just a quick pulse check, a general pulse check on sort of the attitudes and progress in sustainability and circularity in that area?
I'm not so sure about Germany, as I have just
Or
moved
maybe
in.
Slovakia?
Yeah, I think I'm more aligned with situation in Slovakia, but yeah, I wouldn't say it's very good. On the governmental level, it's actually going pretty bad, because we have this new government, very populist, and basically I'll just give you a few examples so you understand the situation. So the director of the eldest national park is actually a poacher who illegally hunted a wolf. They are basically cutting funding for environmental NGOs, defunding the projects that are supposed to be protecting the environment. And yeah, the political campaign topics are about how many bears should be killed and so on. So it's not the best on the governmental level, but that just highlights more need for this like grassroots approach, building it from the ground. And there are still many movements that are trying to protect the nature of Slovakia. And I would say also on the level of citizens, there's a positive progress, like more people are like getting solar panels, more people are becoming aware of climate crisis, as they can also see like more immediate impacts on their own lives. So yeah, it's not a single unified situation. There are different actors. Some of them are not doing very good things, but I would say the people are still doing good work, and hopefully it's gonna go better. Yeah, good thing is that we are part of EU, so we can still be part of some of the frameworks that are there to regulate and support the sustainability.
Yeah, absolutely. It's people power, isn't it? And the more that we educate and stand up, take a stand, and challenge the status quo, that seems to be a theme this episode. The more impact we can have on those people that are in charge of running our countries and making decisions. But I think we might start wrapping it up there. I think we could talk all day about your experiences, but we do just have a few wrap up questions that we're going to be trying to ask all of our guests. The first one is, what is your biggest sustainability pet peeve? So something that really drives you wild.
Yeah, okay, so there's basically this thing about like companies trying to push for some topics that are like presented as sustainable, but they are just used to divert the attention from a greater like sustainability problems. And one of them is basically also very related to our today's discussion, which is basically how the idea of the carbon footprint was conceived. I'm not sure if you're aware of this story, but actually it was pushed by the BP, the British Petroleum, as part of their campaign to basically shift the guilt for environmental crisis from the corporates to the consumers. So yeah, this is something I don't really like, but yeah, I mean, I think it also like brings up this whole concept of like the personal responsibility. And I mean, to some extent it's very important, but we should hold all the actors accountable.
Absolutely. And do you have, for anyone that this resonates for, do you have any sort of books or resources addressing this, or any recommendations for the listeners?
I don't really have any resources. I think if you just Google something like this, you'll find like a lot of articles on it.
Yeah, nice.
Also, like how recycling is like used to legitimize the use of plastics and so on.
There's a lot of info if you type in the right questions. That's right. And what are some practical steps, or at least one actionable thing that our listeners can take away today and go and implement into their own lives? What would you recommend, so that they can reduce their impact, live more sustainably, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so I would say that maybe they could start with this awareness building. So I would invite our listeners to just, let's say, for the next week, observe ourselves when we are taking some decisions, when we are making decisions about our own consumption, and see what actually drives these decisions, how we can incorporate more mindful approach, taking taking sustainability into account, being aware of the impacts that our actions have. So I would invite our listeners to be more mindful of this.
Yeah, I love that. Especially, if you're at a grocery store and you just popped a thing of gum in your trolley, why did you spend some time thinking about, why did I just do that? Was it because it was right there and easy to grab and I don't actually want that thing? Or there's a sale that really drew me in and I don't actually need a new shirt today? I really like that. You can almost do a little journal or something. Great. So last couple of questions, where can our listeners find you, Tomáš?
So I think easiest would be on LinkedIn. So you can just type my name, Tomáš Slaný, TOMASSLANY.
We'll put that in the show notes for sure.
Feel free to message me if you have like any topics you would want to discuss or ideas you want to explore together. If you want to start some sustainability related movement, I'm in.
Yeah, love that. What about your music? Are you available on Spotify or similar?
I have a SoundCloud. But I don't really have many recent creations there.
That's right.
But I'm planning to release something this year.
Nice. Okay, our last question. Can you give us one question? It can be anything. It can be fun. It can be serious. That we can ask our next guest. Okay,
so maybe you can ask him, what is the easiest thing you can do to reduce the environmental impacts of your life, and what is stopping you from taking this action?
Okay, all right, I like it. It's a thinker. Yeah. I especially like what's stopping you. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Tomáš. It's been an amazing discussion. There's so many things for all of us to go away and reflect on, and now we've got an actionable item. I think it's even a good exercise for someone who is involved in sustainability. We're not immune to impulse buys, of course. So I really like that action. All right. Well, thank you
you.
everyone for listening. Thank you to Tomáš. That is a wrap of episode 5. We will see you all next time.
Thank you so much for listening to us.
Thank you very
Have a
much
great
for having
weekend,
me.
Thank
everyone.
you.
Okay.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Tomáš's story is such a wonderful reminder that small intentional actions actually can create meaningful ripple effects, and that living sustainably is as much about our self-awareness as it is about the systems that we live in and the systems that we're trying to change. No matter how small the action, every decision counts. If you're feeling overwhelmed, remember Tomáš's advice. Start by observing your own habits and decisions. Take stock of what's driving them. What can you shift? It's not about being perfect. It's about, staying curious, conscious, and ever more important, compassionate with yourself and others. So thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. Before we go, Millennials Gone Circular is a production of The Waste Not Spot. The Waste Not Spot recognizes the many traditional landowners around the world and their continued stewardship of our planet. We pay our respects and offer our deepest gratitude. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you subscribed, shared it with a friend, or left us a sneaky little review. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at The Waste Not Spot, and join our Millennials Gone Circular community groups to keep the conversations going. That's it for today. Until next time, friends, thanks for listening.